Hello friends, welcome to Osti Empire YouTube channel. This is the voice of Osti. In this series of class, our goal is to equip you with the knowledge that you need to become an expert when it comes to anything website designing. Our goal is to help you grow from whatever level you are, a novice to an expert, and if you have been into the business before now, we are also going to help you, give you more insight into the business. All right, so this is the first class in the first stage of this lesson. The classes are divided into groups, right? And this is the first group of the lessons, and in the first group, this is the first class. Okay, so we are going to be having different classes in this group. All right, so for today, what we want to, before I go there, the material I'm using for this class, the link for the material is in the description. So if you want to check out the material so that you can flow with me, you can simply download it, okay, so that you can flow with me as I'm explaining. All right, back to what I was saying. The content for today's lesson is we want to introduce you to what WordPress is, and also tell you about hosting, and then introduce you to domain. So we are talking about WordPress, we are talking about hosting, we are talking about domain in this very lesson you are watching right now. So to the first thing I mentioned, that is WordPress. When we mention WordPress, what are we talking about? Okay, so I will make use of an illustration throughout the lesson, and I will be using that illustration to help you understand each terms that I have mentioned: WordPress, hosting, and domain. Okay, so the illustration goes thus. Imagine that you have a building project that you want to carry out, okay, and then see WordPress as a company that you can go to, and when you go to them, they have different engineers under them. Then they will tell you, this is your building project, which engineer would you like to help you build your house? Which engineer would you like us to give to you to help you in the building of this project? Okay, so WordPress is like a big company whereby they have different engineers, as I said earlier, who can help you build your website. When I was talking about building the other time, I was using building or a building project in place of a website project. Okay, so talking about a company that has different engineers, that company in this context is WordPress. So when you come to WordPress, there are different builders, and one of those builders is Elementor. Okay, so but you come to WordPress first, and when you come to them, they are the big company, and you say, I want to site project I want to carry out, and then they will say, okay, make a selection of the engineer that you would like us to give to you, or the engineer you would like to make use of, right? As we go into practical, you'll be understanding what I'm talking about more, but it is yet important for me to give you this theoretical explanation so that you'll be able to flow with me when I'm going into practical, and that's the reason for this lesson you are seeing now. Okay, so just see for now, see WordPress as the big company that gives you opportunity to make use of an engineer to carry out your website projects. Okay, now moving to the next item for this video, which I mentioned earlier, and that's your hosting. We are going to talk about what an hosting is. All right, so you have gone to WordPress, you have told them you want to build your website, like you want to build your house. You have gone to the building company, right? So the next thing that we want to talk about now is, where do you want to build your house? Where do you want to build your website? And that your construction project, where do you want to have it done? You need a land. That's what I'm talking about. You must build your house on a land. All right, okay, so hosting also in this context now, your hosting is the space in the internet upon which your website will be built. Just as you are going to need a land to carry out your construction project, your building project, you are also going to need an hosting so that you can build your website into it, and hosting upon which you can build your website. Okay, and you understand that whatever happens to the land upon which a house is built, it directly affects the land. So if you purchase an hosting and anything happens to that hosting after you have built your website on it, whatever happens to the hosting has direct implication on your website. And that's why we can't overemphasize the need for you to purchase your hosting from a hosting company that we can guarantee and we can say, okay, yes, we vouch for these ones. All right, so we are going to get there later. We are going to be buying the hosting and domain practically, and you are going to see how it is done. But now you just need to know that your hosting is the internet space, your land in the internet upon which your website will be built. Now moving further to the last thing in this very lesson is domain. What is domain? When we talk about domain, when we mention the word domain, what are we talking about? All right, in time past, right, if you are going to check out a website, you are going to check it out through binaries, something like 010101 and the likes. You know, easily these days, if you want to check out a website, you can easily say google.com and then you go ahead into their website. But in those days, it used to be binaries. All right, so it was as tech was advancing that the system of domain now came into place, and it replaced that system of binary that we used to have in the past, so that it is now very easy for us to access websites. It is not very easy for us to access websites. You know, if I tell you that if you want to check my website and I give you some long numbers like that, you are very likely to forget them. But if you want to check out my website and I tell you just go to academy.ost.ng, you are much likely to remember that than telling you 0102001 and the likes. So your domain is just like your address online. So if I want to say check out my website and I'm telling you 0101, that is the address online, right? But it will be difficult to remember because they are in numbers. All right, so domain came to replace that. The domain system came to replace that number system, and then we can now have it in words like ost.ng, google.com, academy.ost.ng, all right, and the likes. Now, having explained that, it is now important for me to let you understand that we were talking about hosting the other time, and we made mention that hosting is the space in the internet upon which your website is going to be built. And then we try to use the illustration of a land upon which your house will be built to explain your hosting upon which your house will be built. Now, coming back to that illustration of a land, I hope you understand that the size of land that you buy kind of determines how much of house you can build on that land. All right, so if you buy half a plot, of course you'll be able to build a house, maybe not big one, on that land. All right, so if you buy hosting, also hosting comes in sizes, but you'll be able to have at least a website on it. At least at the minimum you'll be able to have a website on your hosting. All right, but there are hostings that have large space, so much that you can have more than one website on it, more than one domain on it, right? And they will be working independently without affecting each other. If you have 4 houses on a big piece of land, you can go into this house, go into this house, go into this and go into that without having anything to do with the other independently. They are just there on their own. The same thing applicable to your hosting. You can have 4 websites installed on a hosting, and then they are working independently just like that. I just have to say that. All right, and then the last thing that I feel is important to say in this class is that we spoke about domain already, and we said your domain is I was making an illustration now, and I said houses on land. So see your domain as those houses on those lands. All right, so we have 4 houses on a land. That is like 4 domains on a land. All right, I'm just going to give an illustration that will help you understand it well. Okay, so now having said that, you have a house on a land, you have your domain on your hosting. Okay, how big the land is determines how much of houses you can build on it. How large your hosting also is determines how much of websites you can have on it. All right, now having said that, there's what we call subdomains. Talking about subdomains, I will still make use of the illustration of houses on a land, all right, as we have been using from the beginning of this very lesson. All right, so let's say we have one house on a land. From the illustration we have been doing from the beginning of this lesson, you can say that also is one website on a hosting. Okay, so the house is a big one. That's your main house. So if you want to say, let's give the house a name, let's say the house is Hosty, right? So if you want to direct me to that place, you say go to Hosty, and then I know I'm going into the house already. That's the domain name, Hosty. If I press Hosty on the internet, I'm going there. If I tell the taxi man to take me to Hosty, it's taking me to that very house. Okay, now Hosty can now have being a big house, it can now have many flats, right, on the other parts of the land. Now those mini flats, you won't have to go into the big house before you enter them. You just come into the land and then you go to whatever flat you are going to. Okay, so let's say the big house is Osti. Now we have about 3 mini flats. We have mini flat 1, mini flat 2, mini flat 3. Now if you want to tell somebody to go into mini flat 1, you will tell them go to Osti mini flat 1. All right, so that the person knows that the mini flat he is going to is the mini flat that belongs to Osti, or that is around Osti. All right, so that kind of explain what a subdomain is. Now I have a website and the name of my website is osti.ng. That's the big house. According to the illustration I just made now, that's the big house. Now I have a subdomain on my website, and that subdomain is academy.osti.ng. See that subdomain as the mini flat around the big house. Okay, so if I want to tell you to go to the mini flat, I will just say go to academy.osti.ng. so I'm saying go to academy around osti.ng. I hope you are getting the point now. So a subdomain is kind of under a domain. Now the domain is osti.ng and the subdomain is academy.osti.ng. Why you have it as academy.osti.ng is this. Let me do a kind of division in it. Academy is the domain name. Now that domain is under Osti, right? So based on that factor, the domain name will come first, then the principal domain, which is Osti, will come second, then it flows like that. So that is academy.osti.ng. Let me make a clearer illustration. Let's say there's a Mr. Clef, for instance. Now Mr. Clef has 2 businesses that he does. He's into fashion and he's into furniture making. All right, so Mr. Clef buys a domain, right, and the name of the domain is mrclef.com. okay, so now Mr. Clef wants to build a website for his 2 businesses, fashion and furniture. Okay, so he might not have to buy a new domain again if the domain he bought earlier are capable of having 2 subdomains. Now this is how it works. The name for each of the other domains will now follow the first domain. The first domain is mrclef.com. Now the second domain, or the second website you want to build, is about fashion. Let's say the name of its fashion company is Style. So you can have something like style.mrclef.ng. Why? He's building that style website under mrclef.ng. So style will now be Mr. Clef, because Mr. Clef is the bigger domain. We will now have style.mrclef.ng. That's a subdomain under Mr. Clef. Now we want to have another subdomain again that has to do with his furniture business. Now that will now be something like furniture.mrclef.ng. Why you keep having Mr. Clef in the domain name is because Mr. Clef is the principal domain. Whatever domain will be coming under that principal domain will carry the name of the principal domain again. Whatever domain will be coming under the principal domain will carry or will tag along the principal domain. So if you want to start an online academy, right? So you can now have academy.mrclef.ng. Why? Because it is under Mr. Clef. All right, so that's how subdomain works. All right, so for better understanding, I know the system of subdomain and domain can be very complicated and people can get it mixed up and all that. All right, so there is a material in the description that you can read through and will help you understand things better. All right, and if you have questions, you can always drop them in the comment section and I will definitely respond to them. All right, if you have questions, if you are confused in any way, drop them in the comment section. I will do well to attend to you, and also do well to read the material in the description. It will help you get things clearer. Okay, thank you very much for watching through. We'll see you in the next class. Bye.